think we're live. I think we are live. Hey everyone, it's Brenda Muller back again for my live series, which I call Enthusiastically Self-Employed. If you happen to be watching this right now, you might be joining us on either LinkedIn or YouTube or Instagram. Maybe you're watching the playback later or listening to the podcast even, but if you are watching us live, we would love it if you could drop a comment below. Just say hi. That way we know that folks are watching. And it's also the equivalent of if we were in the room, Quinn and I would be tapping our microphones and saying, "Can you hear us in the back of the room?" And you waving at us so we know that the live stream is going. Quinn, while we're waiting for those comments to come in, I want to introduce you to my audience. So I was telling you in the pre-show, you and I have I've never met in person. This is our first time talking live, but your name was mentioned inside Innovation Women. And I think the topic people were talking about that you are an MC and that you help others with MCing. I might be misspeaking here, but I reached out to you, loved your energy, and I said, come on my show. So there may be people in my audience listening and learning from you for the first time, Quinn. Could you tell us a bit about yourself, your name, your business? What do you do? Who do you help?
Yeah, I love it. And thank you so much for the invitation. I'm super excited to be here. I'm such a cheerleader and champion for women. So when you reached out, it was an outstanding, absolutely positively yes. Like you mentioned, my name is Quinn Conyers, and I transform average events into epic experiences as a professional event MC and compelling keynote speaker. My job, my duty, my responsibility is to ensure attendees are activated from start to finish. So they rave, they return, and of course, they attend future events.
Wonderful. And I love your energy. I said that before and I say it again. I was on your website. It was kind of like people will sometimes say I was stalking you. I was researching you. I was researching my guests before coming on today's show and just loved all the really cool action shots of you up on stage and interacting with people on your website. So as a marketer, I have to, just give you a shout out on that. But today we're actually going to be talking about, and you can see the topic here up on screen, how to embrace and embody being a unicorn as a business owner. So really exciting topic. I love this focus here, but let's just kind of kick it off. And what advice do you have for us, Quinn?
I think that it's very easy to blend in when you are called to stick out. And I kind of like became a unicorn by accident. And sometimes we know how awesome and amazing that we are, especially as women business owners, especially as women speakers. But sometimes I believe it also takes another woman to really call out the greatness in you. And that's why I love this topic so much, because that's what happened to me. I was having a conversation with Wendy Lee Curtis. She's also an avid user of LinkedIn, a speaker, an MC, all the good things. And I remember the time where I was kind of battling back and forth what I wanted to prioritize, right? Like, I'm a speaker, I can activate audiences, but I also know how much I love the MC role and elevating the voices of other people, but was a little frustrated because at the time the industry really didn't respect and value the MC role. They would invest in AV, they would hire keynote speakers, they'll get a photographer, videographer, and then the MC was like the lost stepchild in the corner that nobody wanted to invest in, right? Or they would get who I call boring board member Bob to do it. So I had this internal struggle that I was going back and forth with, what do I prioritize, because I do really enjoy both services, but I knew deep in my heart that the MC role was something that I knew events really needed, even if the planner or the organizer didn't always understand. So as I was going back and forth having this conversation with Wendy, she says to me, stop trying to be a horse when you were called to be a unicorn.
Mm.
And it just like punched me in the gut. And I'm like, here I am trying to blend in because it's easier to explain. But what lights me up, what sets me on fire, what separates me from the crowd is the work that I do as an MC. And that was the kind of like epiphany of allowing me to go all in versus being all over the place in this role as a businesswoman who's an MC.
That's great. And were you an MC at the time when you had that conversation with Wendy? Was it already part of your offering and you were going to lean into it, or was where were you at in that journey?
Oh, I was. I was
Mhm.
externally, but internally it was a fight every single day. So it's
Yeah.
like I was
Mhm.
promoting the service, but it still was a battle because I would talk to people and then, oh, we don't need an MC. We're not hiring for that. So I was getting discouraged, right? So I'm like, maybe I should just go back and promote myself as a keynote speaker. At least they'll say, oh, we already have someone, or
Yeah.
not right now, or it was just easily understood. And I think I was kind of getting frustrated on the constant having to explain and fight for the role. And then I just realized, like, well, Quinn, you are a fighter. So put your boxing gloves on and fight for the role. So that's what I decided to
The
do.
next question. So now you're like, okay, now I'm going to embrace this. I'm not going to run away from it. I know I'm a unicorn, and there's people out there who need unicorns, but these are the same people that are saying we don't need an MC. So how did your approach change, and how can this relate to other people who might be in their own business and evolving their business?
Yeah, and there's unicorns every business, right? I just happen to be in the
Mhm.
unicorn in the speaking industry, right? And for me, it was being able to recognize that I wanted to work with the willing. What do I mean by work with the willing, Brenda? There are some people that I have to convince them twice. I have to convince them why they should hire a professional MC or a professional speaker. And then there's some people who already believe and they're just trying to figure out, who do I choose? So instead of trying to convince people that they needed an MC or to hire a professional speaker, I decided to go with the event organizers and the planners who already were like, okay, we're having this event. It's a woman in business event. We need an AV team. We need a photographer, videographer, two keynote speakers, and an MC. So I started talking to them versus trying to convince someone, here's why you need an MC, versus this is what you should look for in an MC. Here are some questions that you should ask your MC. Here's how to find the correct MC. Does the vibe of your MC match the vision of your event? So it was a marketing twist, it was a messaging, it was a language transformation that I wanted to talk to the individuals who already believed. And there's somebody out there that you don't have to beat over the head with your product or service as a business person. There's somebody who already believes, just like there is a customer or a client for someone who's willing to buy a Honda. And then there's somebody out there willing to buy a BMW, a Maserati. So it's just like, talk to that person, right? So talk to the person. So again, I began to like work with the willing instead of trying to convince you on why this person shouldn't be the right one. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. So let me ask you, kind of related to that. So let's say you're in a conversation with someone and they're talking about they're interested in your services, but they're like, I'm kind of on the fence whether or not we need an MC. So let's call them a lukewarm prospect. Those Would those conversations continue, and then you're trying to educate and explain them about what an MC can do, or would that come up, or is this a made up scenario? I guess.
No, it's not, because there's some
Yeah.
people who are curious, right?
Mhm.
They know deep down, like, boring board member Bob. Sorry, Bob. But you know what I mean? They know there's already inkling. They are inquisitive. They're want to learn. Okay, I've never hired an MC before. I'm
Yeah.
curious. So if you're curious, then we can have the conversation. But if your mindset and your mentality is we don't need that, then we're never gonna have a conversation. But if it's like, listen, Quinn, I've never hired an MC before, or we had an MC in the past, we're looking for a different flavor, a different vibe, or we're looking for someone. Now our event used to be 1 day, now it's 3 days. So we need someone who can hold the energy for multiple days. I'm willing
Mhm.
to have conversations with the curious, right? Because you might not know. And I would love to provide some MC education for you. But if you are, we don't need this, I don't understand why we would have this, then it doesn't even make sense because you already don't believe in the role.
Mhm.
But if you're curious, or you're like, we need an MC, we need the energy up, we need someone who can transition, we want to make sure that if we get, off time, that somebody can bring us back on. And sometimes that's how it happens too. Like, we had
Yeah.
someone do it for a couple of years, we ran over by an hour, tech went down, the person didn't know what to do. So I am sometimes called into crisis mode after something
Mhm.
goes horribly wrong, which again, I don't mind, but I'd rather I be a former thought than an afterthought.
Yeah, I like that, and poor Bob. Let's talk about Bob a little bit, because boring Bob. I like when you say that. I can totally relate. I've been at some of these events where the MC is an afterthought, and it's a board member or somebody on the leadership team who's in a leadership role but doesn't really. And they're basically reading from a script. They're reading the agenda. They're reading the bios, and it's like a snooze fest. And
Yeah.
as a participant, I can feel boring Bob. I can understand that. Like, contrast that with what you do as an MC. And I know from the website photos that I saw, you have a very dynamic approach, but tell us, like, what is the potential of a really good MC at an event?
Well, a really good MC, or what I believe separates me from the boring board member Bobs and other people, is there
Mhm.
is a level of emotional intelligence that is usually underestimated in this role. So sometimes Bob could have been there for years and his jokes are from 1975 and nobody really gets it, but he gets three laughs, so he thinks it's a connection, right? So part of me and how I do things differently is, number one, if it's scripted and it's read, it's not connecting. So part of it is, yes, you have a script, you have an agenda, but part of it is improv. It's being quick on your feet. So if the tech goes down, you're still able to kind of run with different things. So there's also an energy and there's also a different demand. Usually, if Bob is doing it, and he's a member of the senior team, he doesn't realize sometimes how he's going to get pulled on in several ways. So it's almost like I'm talking to someone really quickly and I have to go on stage. And it's hard to kind of make that transition. So again, I think that for me, it really is about the emotional intelligence, reading the room, and also even making suggestions on how we can potentially still use Bob and highlight him just in a different role. So
Yeah.
for me, it's just about attendee activation. And I tell people all the time, if you're interested in hiring me or you're looking for an MC just to introduce speakers and sponsors, I'm probably not the right MC for you because
Right.
I consider myself an extension of the team. I'm doing audience activation activities. If we just came from lunch and I feel like the energy is kind of low, I might have a conversation with the DJ to start the music 5 minutes early to lift the energy back up. Bob's not doing that. Bob is finishing his Caesar salad and he's making his way back to the stage really quickly if he remembers that he has to introduce you as the next speaker. So there's a lot of moving parts that people don't understand. And then for me, it's like I really do try to work with, event planners and meeting planners who are like, we're not just trying to having an event or a conference. We're looking for an experience. And if you're looking for an experience, that starts with the first face that people see. And that's usually the MC. So that's kind of how I position myself. And like, Bob's great. Let's just use Bob in a different role.
Okay.
Or,
Yeah.
if you want people to rave, to return, to build relevant relationships, to refer others, there has to be some intentionality. And usually Bob is reading the script that has been given to him versus bringing the words alive, recognizing VIPs, going off the cuff, being, using a little bit improv when it's needed and it's necessary.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned improv. And by the way, if anyone's just joining us, we're here today talking to Quinn Conyers about how to embrace and embody being a unicorn. And she's talking about a bit of her experience with her business evolution to being an amazing event MC. And you talk about improv, and I have to imagine that's a lot of it because, like, pulling things that are demonstrating to the audience that you're not just there reading a script, but you're just like one of them, that you're in the crowd. And I imagine, humor is probably a big element of that improv. Is that fair to say? And any thoughts there?
Yeah, and here's the thing, you don't necessarily have to be a comedian, right?
Yeah.
But you have to know like when there's certain funny things that you can say or you can pull off of, right?
Yeah.
So, one of the things that I do is, a keynote summary. So after someone speaks and you might share a story about how like I don't know, you ate broccoli for the first time and it just didn't sit well, whatever that looks like. In my recap, I would say, we all know we never buy broccoli for the first time when we're on the road, right? Like little things like that, that it might not be funny, but it's a way to pull in a funny moment.
Mhm.
And you also get those opportunities by being off stage as well. As an MC, a lot of times we are focused on what happens on the main stage, but part of what I do is I'm out in the crowd. I'm going to the restroom. I'm at the coffee breaks. So if Brenda and I have a conversation, I say, this is amazing conversation. I'm loving this conference. Matter of fact, I was talking to Brenda and she gave me a quick little nugget. Hey, Brenda, oh, that's you. Now it's a quick connection, right?
Yeah.
Bob's not
Mhm.
doing that.
Yeah.
Bob's reading exactly what's on the script, right? So
Mhm.
it really just is about kind of finding your rhythm and incorporating funny moments without pressing the fact that you don't have to be a comedian. Some people are. There's all different types of MCs. I like professional development. Put me up a good conference, a good association. I mean, if you put me in front of like any type of women groups, that is my jam. But if you could just pick up on funny moments and highlight them, you don't necessarily have to be a comedian, but you do want to take your audience on an emotional roller coaster. They should feel happy. They should feel inspired. They should feel empowered. They should even get a little bit upset, you know what I mean, at one time, and not upset at you, but upset at whatever story you told, right? Because it's like, I wanted to go into being a business owner and somebody told me nobody pays MCs. I want you to be mad at that person just like I was mad at that person when I told the story. So
Yeah.
those are the things that I think about that can add pockets of humor without necessarily being a full-fledged comedian on stage.
I love that, and I think the boring board member Bob, he has his script of things to do. I love that you said he was eating his Caesar salad. He like has to put down his fork to introduce the afternote speaker, and then he goes to sit down again, and he's looking at his clock and not really paying attention to the after lunch speaker until he has to come back and introduce the person after him. Whereas you're like listening for the broccoli stories and you're bringing them in. It sounds like even in your role as an MC, you're on way before the event starts. I know that because you're doing a lot of
Yes.
research and prep work, but you're on from the time the first person walks in the door and you're interacting and engaging and learning and bringing that back into the crowd, right? So you're on and there's probably a lot of your duties that you don't even know what they are until they happen, until the need arises or until you identify the need. Is that fair to say?
Oh, absolutely. Because if
Yeah.
you have, let's say you're speaking, right? And you have 60
Mhm.
minutes, and for whatever reason, I don't know what's going on, you speak for 40. There's a 20-minute gap. Whose responsibility is that? Quinn's,
Yeah.
right? Versus
Mm,
Bob's like, well, I mean, she finished early. I'm not sure what to do. We have some extra time.
yeah.
Do we go to
Okay,
break? Do we
I
go
go to
to
the
lunch?
bathroom and grab a cup
Yeah,
of coffee.
yeah,
Yeah.
do that. No, I might fill in. I might take some, do some audience Q&A. Like I might
Yeah.
fill the time to make sure. But yes, it is, you're not off. You're
Mhm.
not off. You're on. And I tell people, a lot of conferences now they're incorporating AI and apps, right? And I'm like, but I'm
Yeah.
also your official event GPS. So if you can't find something, I should be knowledgeable to let you know what's next. So, yes, it is not just the 3 days or one day that you're there. It's the prep work that I'm doing with the planner before that. It's on stage, it's off stage. It's also too when the magic happens when things go left or right, which is no planner's favorite thing, but it's my favorite thing. I like it when a mic goes out. I like it if Brenda goes a little bit over or under because now I can get it back on track. I can finagle. I can do what I was hired to do, which is to be the event insurance policy, right? To make sure that we stay on track, audiences are engaged, sponsors are happy, speakers feel like this was a great experience for them as well.
I gotta type that in up on screen. As the MC, you're the event insurance policy. I think that's such a brilliant expression. I'm sorry typing that up because I can't type and talk at the same time. I want to ask you another question, which was, when things go wrong. And I think about like I learned my public speaking through Toastmasters originally, and there's different, speaking competitions and things like that that you can do. And I always wondered, wouldn't it be fun to have a speaking competition at a folk conference where things go wrong? And then what
Yeah.
do you do? Microphone or so talk to us about, maybe some of those past experiences that you've had and how you were able to manage them with grace and keeping the audience engaged and maybe even turning it into something entertaining as well.
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes it's not even wrong, it's just unexpected, right? Like you just it wasn't in the plan. So I just recently ended up getting I was hosting an event and it was around Halloween and I was on stage and not in the script a dinosaur comes in, like dinosaur, full-fledged costume dinosaur. And
Mhm.
I'm like, okay, there's a dinosaur that walked in. Now, if you're back there, you can see it, but if you're in the front, you can't. But it's like big, Tyrannus, like it's huge, green dinosaur. And
Yeah.
I said, I kind of like, I was like, okay, I have to mention this because it's a dinosaur, not even an elephant in the room. It's like so obvious that if you're back there, you're looking at this, right? And
Yeah.
it's also Halloween. So it was a way for me, Brenda, to add a little bit of humor very quickly. And I'm like, I'm super excited that you're here. I said, we're kicking off day 2, and there's so many amazing people in this room. And I just got word that, we have a very special guest, VIP. I mean, you can't even get access to him on a regular, but he decided to come to this conference. It is Tyrannosaurus Rex, and in the back of the room, and everybody turns around. I mean, and the dinosaurs doing all these things, and it just was a great 30-second moment. I just called it out, and sometimes you have to call it out. I remember I was doing a conference for women in the engineering space, and I had a lapel mic on, and I there were like 4 women doing a panel and like none of their mics worked. I mean, none of them. Like it was just like we're in front of like 500 people. None of the mics are working. And I'm like, what is happening here? So literally what I did was I got on stage and I said, sometimes you can have a full-fledged plan and sometimes the plan doesn't go according to plan. You have to improvise. Like right now, I'm taking off my jacket because I'm going to give Brenda my mic. And I did this all on stage and gave my mic away. And then when I gave my mic to the person who was interviewing, and she's like, it would take a woman to get up here,
Right.
take off her jacket and give me her mic. And the show kept going on. So,
Right.
I mean,
Mhm.
sometimes you just have to be aware of it and like honestly highlight it and keep it moving. And they loved me after that. Right. But in the back
Yeah.
of my mind, I'm like, why are 5 mics not working on the stage? AV,
Well,
what is
again,
happening?
see, you are the insurance policy. I love that expression. You are there in case of emergency, in case of fire, in case of microphones going out or a speaker going too long or speaker not showing up entirely. Like, Quinn,
Yes,
what are we gonna do? Help
it
us out here,
happens.
right? Hmm. Now, you're a speaker as well as an MC. I'm guessing. I know MC, you're doing speaking as a part of it throughout the day, but do you also do keynote talks and things
Oh
like that?
yeah. And I
Hmm.
love when I get booked for a combo deal. If I can MC and keynote, like that's my happy place. But yes, I started off as a keynote speaker. My favorite audiences are women speakers, women entrepreneurs, women business owners, or women who are in male dominated industries. And I love to show them how to use their voice, how to stand tall and not shrink, especially if they're the only in the room. My keynote presentation is Turn Conversations into Clients, where I show women how to use language and conversation as a way to strategically grow their business.
And did the speaking start first and then you got into MC, or tell us a little bit about that path?
Yes, it did. So I mean, I knew I wanted to be speaking since probably ninth grade. And,
Mm.
when I got to college and somebody asked me an infamous question that completely changed my life, they were like, well, how much do you charge? And I like, wait a minute, you can get paid to speak. So that's when I realized that it's a profession. So at first, it was me, on stages trying to get myself booked and do things like that. And then as the time went, I was speaking here, speaking there. And then when the pandemic happened, um I knew someone, I was speaking, and they were like, listen, we have been doing our event for years in person, and we are going to go virtual. And I'm not sure if you do this or not, but do you moderate? Do you host events? Your energy, I feel like, could translate over to an MC. And I'm like, well, yes, I do. And it was a service that I offered, but I wasn't getting booked like that because I didn't know how to verbalize the value of the service. And I was
Mm.
getting turned down. We got somebody to do that. We don't need that. Right. So, long story short, I was just like, yes, I do that. And when I did it, I saw the difference that it made. I saw how planners were like, how were we doing this before without somebody like you? Like, we were suffering in silence. And I'm like, yes, yes, you were. You were suffering. So once I realized that, I just kind of made a conscious effort to begin to switch because I mean, my whole world, my friends are keynote speakers, but now they're my allies. So it's like, hey, I'll be your keynote speaker. Do you have an MC yet? Hey, you should check out Quinn. Right. So that's kind of how I really begin to shift the role and make emceeing number one and keynoting number two.
That's interesting. I love the backstory there. And as a marketer and as somebody who's also self-employed, I love how you have identified a market need and you've also identified a service and an area of expertise that you are uniquely qualified in. And I believe like you were born to be an MC, you were born to be a speaker. I mean, all of these things you talk about the energy. And I heard this expression once, and I can't remember who it was that said it, but like everything is figure outable. I believe that
Mm.
you're the type of person we could put into any type of a situation as an MC or even as a keynote, and you could figure it out, right?
Yeah, and that's part of my job too. I had one time
Mm.
a woman went into labor. I never delivered a baby before. Like, what? I don't know what I'm doing. But here's what I said. I was like, okay, so the planner was freaking out, rightfully so. There's a bunch of people, and again, we don't have any nurses on duty. We didn't think anybody's going to go into labor, and I can tell, like at that moment, I needed to take over, or not. This was going to become chaotic very quickly, right? So I said, call 911. When they arrive, do not send everybody.
Right,
Send one person to come check on her so it doesn't necessarily cause attention to everybody else. If you get there and there's 5 firefighters, 3 people, like everybody's like, what's going on? But if it's one
yeah,
person who comes in, let that person, I said, and have them as soon as I go on start so nobody's looking around. You know what I
right.
mean? So as soon as I
Mhm,
started, is exactly what happened. And they were able to get her away without a big fuss. But again, there
yeah.
was no training on that. That
There's
was
nobody
just
telling
like,
you how to do like, what if a woman goes into labor and you're looking through, oh, yeah, here it is, it's in the handbook.
You know what I mean? And then when I tell the
Yeah.
story, I'm like, listen, you got two, you know what I mean, options here. Either I can deliver a
Yeah.
baby, I am not an OBGYN, or number two, we can call somebody. I was like,
Right.
this is what we need to do, right? But
Yeah.
it's also a story that you can tell now as a part of, your experience and your expertise on stage. And I'll say to somebody,
Mhm.
I was like, okay, I know, I said, does Bob know how to deliver babies? Like, no, what are you talking about? So what are you going to
Yeah.
do if one of your attendees have a medical emergency?
Mhm. Yeah.
Is your is the person on stage going to cause attention, or are they able to divert or direct or do whatever they need to do? So those are just some of
Yeah.
the things that, again, it is figure outable. I don't have to deliver the baby, but I can give
You
you some insight on how do we do this with making sure this woman feels comfortable without causing attention and alarm to the situation that's going on right now.
I love it. And I remember once too, I know it was from Toastmasters or someone else who was a speaker, but they shared this with me, and I think it really helped. And this might help our audience as well. Those of you who are speakers, your audience really wants to see you doing a good job. They want to see you enjoying yourself up on stage, whether you're the MC or as the keynote or as the speaker. But you can't ignore the elephant in the room or the dinosaur in the room or the person going into the labor in the room. So, that's going to be the focus of our attention until you acknowledge it and say, look at this thing that's going on here. And then you can redirect the energy so they're not being distracted. Like, why isn't Quinn talking about the dinosaur in the back? Like, let's address
Yeah.
it and then let's move it into the conversation and then move it out of the conversation to bring it back. So you're almost like guiding that road
Yeah,
coming back into the conversation, right?
absolutely.
Yeah. So, and I did put the ticker up on screen if you are watching us live or in on LinkedIn or on YouTube or on Instagram. Please don't be shy. Drop a comment below if you have any questions for Quinn. Maybe you're thinking about getting into speaking or becoming an MC and you'd like to hear some of her advice along the way. Don't be shy. This is your time. You can also use the I have a friend technique. And I love this technique, Quinn. It's the I have a friend who's doing a lot of speaking right now and she's thinking about adding MC as a part of her services. So let me just give you that
Yeah.
hypothetical as a real question. What advice would you have for someone who is a speaker who's thinking about opening up an MC services as part of their offering?
Yeah, so I love this because the majority of the people who I do talk to, that's what they're thinking. They are a speaker and they've been asked me a couple of times if they can host or moderate the event as well. And they never thought about it, or like I said, they treat it like a side chick and not a wife. You know what I mean? So it's about
Yeah. Mhm.
decide. The first thing is to decide, do you want to offer this, right? Because this can be a cross sell or it can be an upsell. So for example, if I'm talking to keynote speakers about how to grow their business, I might say, here is another potential revenue stream. Yes, you can be a coach. Yes, you can be an author. As a keynote speaker, you can offer a workshop or a breakout session, but you can also add MC services. So I think it's one of those things, especially LinkedIn, which I love, is it visible to people, right? Like
Yeah.
most people
Mhm.
have speaker, author, coach. You could be speaker, MC, coach, right? So is the service visible on your LinkedIn, on your website? Do people know that you offer it? Are you taking it seriously? When you're having keynote conversations, are you even asking, right? Listen, I know that you're thinking about having me as the keynote speaker. Would you also be interested in having me potentially host your event as well or do a breakout
Yeah.
session? So offer it. That's the biggest thing, is offer it. And it should be a visible offer. People should not have to search. They should not have to look all over to see. If you're calling yourself an MC or a speaker, there should be a microphone in your hand on your profile picture, you know what I mean, on your feed or on your website. It shouldn't take me long for what you say to match what I see on your virtual background check, because that's what people are going to do. If you say that you're an MC, if you say that you're a speaker, and I go to your Facebook, I go to your LinkedIn, I go to your website, I want to be able to see that within 3 seconds.
Yeah. I love it. And I pulled up her profile up on screen. For those of you who might be listening on the podcast, you'll have to pop over on YouTube to see the video of this. But all the things that Quinn is talking about right now are represented on her LinkedIn profile. She has a microphone in her headline field that follows her around when she's posting, commenting, replying. It starts off right away with professional event MC. You also mentioned MC Educator with over 200 plus reviews. And I think that's how it came up now that I'm thinking about it in Innovation Women. People were saying she has a program that she helps to educate. So is that true? Is there an offering that you have that you help to educate people about being an MC?
So what I do is, yes, I teach emerging and aspiring MCs how to break into the business. Most people have
Mm,
no problem with activating audiences. If you put a microphone in their hand, they can introduce speakers and sponsors with ease. The problem is they don't know how to make it a business. They don't know how to get paid
yeah.
for it. So they're getting a lot of opportunities to host birthday parties, and that's fun, but they're like, "Wait a minute, this can be a job, this can be a business." So I have an Epic MC Academy where I teach speakers, individuals who maybe they did a lot of emceeing or hosting or facilitating in their job, and now they want to offer it. I do have a few people who were former newscasters, and they used to do event hosting on the side as part of their job, and now they want to do it, as an income stream. So I teach aspiring and emerging MCs how to break into the business and transform their hosting hobby into a lucrative and profitable MC business.
I am definitely intrigued. So I'm going to be looking a little bit further into this, and I know our audience might be as well. I'm going to start to wrap up our conversation here today. And first, since I have your LinkedIn profile up on screen, Quinn, are you open to people inviting you to connect? And if so, do you have any instructions for them on that
Of
process?
course. Send me a connection request, follow me, message me. We're fast friends. Any friends of Brenda are a friend of mine, right? So please connect
Yeah.
with me on LinkedIn. And of course, if you are planning a conference or you're speaking at a conference and you think that they could use an energetic MC like me, definitely just drop my name, to that person as well. Because I love to, be on stages, but more importantly, I love to be an extension of the team in the MC capacity or even the keynote capacity as well.
Awesome. And I'm going to swap over now to your website. I love this website. It makes me smile every time I look at it. And I'm going to put the link for your website up on screen. It's quinnconyers.com. So I'm going to spell that out in case someone's watching or rather listening on the podcast. QUINNCONYERS.com, quinnconyers.com. And is there anything you want to kind of point out since I have you up on screen here?
I'm just grateful for this. It's, when you're building a website and you're marketing and positioning yourself, you always go through a couple of renditions of it. And part of what I wanted to do is make sure that my energy and my essence was felt and seen before you even start to scroll. And I believe that this picture does a great job of showing like you're not going to get somebody boring and basic. You're going to get someone who is going to have the audience completely, activate. But more importantly, it also shows my humanity. Brenda, to be honest with you, I went back and forth with posting this picture. Why? There's a little bit of my bra showing, right? And I'm like, oh, I don't know if that's professional enough, but I also feel like, you know what? I'm willing to be a little bit on the daring side. So it's one of my
Yeah,
favorite photos. It was a great event, and people were, as you can see, all the way in with hands in the air. So I'm
I
proud
love
how
it.
far my website has come.
I love it, and I wouldn't have even known that. I thought that was, like, maybe part of the tank top. It was, like, a black lining or something on it, but it's funny how and you look at that photo, I love the energy, the colors, even the background, it looks like you're in front of a beautiful sunset, and then, more importantly, you've got the hands in the audience, so whatever it is that you were doing, immediately you get that positive energy sensation, and I think about if anyone's doing an event, why would you not hire Quinn, like,
Right.
for your MC? Like, you'd be crazy not to not hire her for your event. So, again, I'll encourage our audience to check that out if they are interested. So, as we start to wind down our conversation for here today, Quinn, we were talking today about, let me pull up our topic up on screen again, how to embrace and embody being a unicorn as a business owner. I call this show Enthusiastically Self-Employed. I think you embody that in all that you do. So, any final comments for us before we wrap up?
I would say if you're in a space or an industry where you do feel like a unicorn, you do feel like the only, or you're doing something a little bit differently, it's a sign. I do feel like every industry deserves a trailblazer or a pioneer. Right? Like sometimes you're not seeing any examples because you were called to be that example. I knew lots of speakers, but I didn't know a lot of people who are prioritizing the MC role. And I found myself kind of looking for someone, and I'm a faith-filled woman, and God was like, you are it. You are going to be the one that gets this industry to look differently, when it comes to the MC role. You're going to inspire more women of color, you know what I mean, to look at this as a viable role. You're going to open up the eyes to speakers and say, yes, you can be a speaker, an author, a coach, but you can also add MCing as a service. So how I have embraced, you know, I guess my unicorn is I know that I'm supposed to be the trailblazer, the pioneer, the box, you know, breaker, not the box checker. And once I got that, I was able to move forward with being a unicorn, because sometimes they talk about a unicorn, and everybody who is a unicorn, everybody who's doing something different, they didn't always start off that way. They started off probably as a horse trying to fit in. Then they maybe went to a zebra, right? And like, all right, I'm doing things a little bit differently. And then at one point, they just completely break out and be like, you know what? I'm going to do things a little bit differently, and I'm going to change some things in this industry. And then that's when they kind of elevate from horse to complete unicorn status. But it is a transformation. It's an evolution. It doesn't happen overnight, because it's scary, because you sometimes are the only.
I love it. I can see why so many people in Innovation Women, they were like on the Quinn Conyers fan club train, when we were talking about it that day. And as we wrap, final question: if people are interested in working with you or booking with you, can you just give us that menu of services? What are all the things that you do, and then how can people best get a hold of you for
Yeah,
that?
so I would just start with LinkedIn. Reach out to me on LinkedIn first if you're interested. And I'm available to either MC or speak at your event. And if you are having, like, say, a business event, a women's leadership, a women's entrepreneurship event, those are my specialties. The holidays are around. So if you're having an award celebration or a gala, I host those as well. But yeah, just keep me in mind for all your hosting or speaking needs. I would love to be an extension of your team.
Wonderful. Well, Quinn, thank you so much. This has been a delightful conversation. I selfishly like it because I get to learn a little bit more about you, and I love being on a conversation where we have similar energy and philosophy, supporting women and helping organizations and having fun at events, and managing all those great things that are happening with there. So I just want to thank you again for joining me here today.
Thank you for the invitation. I had a great time.
All right. All right. As we wrap, I want to remind everyone, if you're watching this video, whether you're watching it live or in playback, as soon as the video is done playing here on LinkedIn, you can find a share button at the bottom. Looks like a little paper airplane icon. Just share that video along. When you do so, I would love it if you could tag Quinn and myself in the post. So to tag, you have to use the little @ symbol and then start typing in our names until you see it appear in the drop down. Once you release that, it will then make it clickable. It'll notify us, and both of us will be happy to drop a comment on your post. With that said, thanks for watching. This has been Enthusiastically Self-Employed, and I look forward to seeing everyone on LinkedIn. Take care and have a wonderful day. Bye.